This is Amud Yomi, Gemara and Berachos, Daf Chav Beis, Amud Beis. You pick it up on the bottom of Chav Beis, Amud Aleph. We're in the middle of discussing Tefillah of a Baal Keri. We ended off Daf Chav Beis with a large level of the Gemara, bringing it down, the Maisa, going from the fact, is there an obligation of Tefillah's Keri, bringing out the concept of Tisha Kabim, which is pouring on 9 Kabim bin Nisina. And for that point, we pick up in the bottom of Chav Beis Amud Aleph, Rav Nachman etikein a chatzva b'tishas kabin. Rav Nachman prepared a chatzva, which is a vessel of 9 kabin for the Talmidim, so that they would be able to have Tisha Kabin poured to them before coming to learn Torah. Kiyasar Rav Dimi Amar, Rav Yaakov, Rav Yehuda, Glustra Amru. Rav Yehuda, Glustra said, Lashanu al Chayla La'intzai. The din of Tisha Kabim isn't for everyone. It's only for a Chayla La'intzai, who had an involuntary emission of Keri. Avla Chayla Margal, even if it's a Chayla, but it was Margal who was due to an act of Tashmish, then the halacha is, Arbaim saw, they need a full 40 saw. Omer Rav Yosef, Itbar Chatzbeit Rav Nachman. By saying what you just said, you just literally broke the barrel of Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman seemingly created a situation in which it would make it easy to have tefillas Keri. And now the fact that you're saying it's only a chayla, you're limiting the case greatly, and therefore you quote unquote figuratively broke the vessel of Rav Nachman. Continues the Gemara with a little bit of a different way of learning. There was a story in Ovda, Ovda is the story. As we turn over to Chav Beis and Beis, Bekila de Rav Aishia, in the room of Rav Aishia, also Vishal de Rav Asi, they came and they asked Rav Asi about the status of Baal Keri being Taival and a mikvah versus Tisha Kabin. Amalu Rav Asi said, Leishanu al-Chayla hamargil. The din of Tisha Kabin is only a Chayla b'margil, meaning that it happened to be a regular act of Tashmish. Al-Chayla ainsai, Pater miklum, he lowers the level a little bit. Chayla ainsai is Pater, Chayla margil is going to be Tisha Kabin. Anyone who's not a Chayla is going to need a full memsa, full mikvah. Rav Nachman, it's the made Chatzbeit Rav Nachman, you literally congealed, you fixed the vessel of Rav Nachman, you resurrected this din that there's a possibility to do Tisha Kabim in the case at least of a chayla who is margul. And the reason why this is even larger is that Rashi explains in Amud Aleph that Talmidei Chachamim have a din of a chayla, and therefore there will be a large necessity for the case of Tisha Kabim. We continues the Gemara Chav Beis and Beis 4 lines down. Michti says the Gemara. They're all arguing on what was the takana of Ezra. Let's see how did Ezra make the takana, which is an interesting question. Often we find Gemaras in debating and trying to figure out what is the takana, and the Gemara here is trying to figure out what was the takana. So let's just go ask. So Taisus on the top line points out the reason is because if this was something that people are doing all the time, it's not some convoluted din that we don't know what happens. So let's just go ask people, where was the takana instituted? Says the Gemara, Amar Abayi. Says Abayi, Ezra taking Labari Amargal Arbaimsa. Ezra was misakin for a regular healthy person who sees Kari via an act of Tashmish 40 sa. And Ubari, if he's a healthy person, Bala'insa, it wasn't via Tashmish, it happened involuntarily, Tisha Kabim. And then that was the takana of Ezra, meaning Tisha Kabim was built in on a level of Aines. Basam Raya Pligiba Chayla. The Amrayim argued about Chayla. Mar Sava Rav Dimi Achal Amargal Ubari Kibari Amargal. B'Chayla Einsa Kibari La'insa. Whereas Umar Sava and Ravin dropped it all down a level. Chayla Amargal is Kibari La'insa. B'Chayla Einsa is Pater Meklum. So the question is, how do we line up the case of Chayla? Do we equate the Hergelus part that it came via an act of Tashmish, or do we equate the Chayla with the Chayla? Says the Gemara again, and Rav Dimi is equating the margul. That chayla margul is like bari margul, whereas Rava is saying no, chayla margul is more like a bari la'insa, because since the act was via hargelis, via regular tashmish, it's more equatable to a bari, even though the bari was ba'ines, was involuntarily. Amar Rava needed to Ezra tefillah nisina mitikin. So Rava argues. Abaye said built into Ezra's original takana was nisina, was pouring Tisha Kabin, and says Rava no. Ezra was mitakin tefillah. He never was mitakin nisina. V'amar mar Ezra tikin tefillah bali krayin. So ask Rava and Abaye, where did you get this fact that you're telling me that Ezra was mitakin? Part of the takana was Tisha Kabim. Elo amar Rava no. Ezra tikin tefillah lebari hamargal arba'imsa. Says Rava, the takana of Ezra was clear. Full-fledged tefillah for whom? A regular healthy person, for when hamargal, he had an act of tashmish. And then the Asur Rabbanan, and they created a second takana to try to fulfill the takana of Ezra, which was what? Viskin lebari la'insa Tisha's Kabin. And then step 3 is Asamarai v'kamifgi b'chayla. And now Mar Savar Avdimi Otchal Amarga Kabari Amarga v'chayla Insi Kabari La'insi Mar Savar Lebari Amarga Larbaim Sa, like the takana. V'chali Amarga, this is Ravin. So fundamental machlekes Abaye and Rava in what was the takana. According to Rava, the takana was only on Tvila, Memsa. The Chachamim came along and created this entity of Nisina Tishas Kabim, and then the Amoraim, Ravin and Rav Dimi disagreed within that. Abaye said no, within the takana of Ezra was already Nisina, and they just argue about Chayla versus Bari. So Amar Rava Helcha, so what is the halacha? Bari Hamargel, V'chayli Hamargel, Arba'imsa. Says Rava halacha Lamaisa smack him in the Amid right before the two dots. Anytime it came to an act of Tashmish, Memsa is required. Ubari la'oinsai Tishas Kabim. Regular person, involuntary admission of carry, Tishas Chavim. Avol Chayle La'inzai is Pater Me'klum. And indeed, as we mentioned many times, there is a chumrah of Tfilas carry. There's a chumrah at least. The Rav Sheinberg used to say, why not at least be makbid on Tishas Kabin, which could be done via a few minute shower, just not moving under the shower water, according to Rav Sheinberg. But halacha, one is allowed to daven and learn, even after seeing Keri, whether it was La'insai, whether it was Beher Giloi. Continues the Gemara, smack in the middle of the Gemara. Tanu Rabbanan. Bal Keri Shanasa love Tishas Kabim Mayim Tahar. Bal Keri, the had 9 Kabim Tor, on him is Tahar. B'medvar Mamurim La'atzma. He says you want to only learn Torah yourself. So further qualifications within the halacha of Al-Kari. Avul Achirim Arba'im Sa. Rav Yehuda Amar Arba'im Sa. Mikol Makam, you always need Arba'im Sa. Rav Yechon, Rav Ben Levi, Rav Lazar, Rav Yisrael, Chanina, they debated these Amoraim. Chad Mehai Zuga, V'chad Mehai Zuga Reisha. As follows: Chad Amar Hadamar, that which the Tanakhama said, Ma'advar Ma'amurim. When does Tisha Kabin apply? La'atzmai avlachayim arba'im sa lo'ishanu ela l'chayla hamargil. Again, we're sort of putting the two Gemaras together now. The din of teaching to yourself, teaching to others. Now, how does that equate with the din of chayla? So he's going to be says chavim. Anytime you're teaching Torah to someone else, you need a full memsa. And some learn no, that the whole din is going on the seifa. A new qualification, memsa in the ground. Again, let's not get confused. It doesn't say Mayim she'uvim versus Mei mikvah. A new qualification that the water has to be in the ground, even if it's going to be Mayim she'uvim, drawn water. Avul bekelim. But if it's in a keli, then loy. V'chadamar afilu bekelim nami, it's even going to work bekelim. Says the Gemara, that it works in a keli. I understand that which the Brisa said. Rav Yudai, mikol makayim, all scenarios, even a regular bathtub. Elamadamar bekarkin bekilim loy mikol makom lasuye. Whatever you did mean when he said mikol makom. Says the Gemara lasuye mayim sheuvim. Concludes this part of the Amud Rapapa Ravuna Beit Yeshua V'Rava Bar Shmuel right before the Mishnah. Karich Refti Badidadi. They were eating bread and they were about to bench. Amlu Rapapa Havli Di Lebarach. Let me bench. Naflu Tisha Kabin. Because I had 9 kabin poured upon me, even though I was a Baal Kari, but I had 9 kabin poured on me. Amlu Rava Bar Shmuel Tanina B'Medvar Munat V'Yavlachem Rabba Imsa. And if you're being, you might see other people in benching, so you should have to have a full memsa. So says Rav Shmuel, let me bench. Because I went into proper mikvah. Amalu Rav Huna, I have no issues. It was never a Balkari in the first place. And finally, Rav Chama Tavlu Maili Yom Pescha, he went to the mikvah and Erev Pesach, Leitzi Ramdi Chayvasan, V'lesach Kavasei, Lamaisa, we don't pass in that way, that you don't need actual tefillah even to be might see others. Let's begin the Mishnah on the bottom of Chabez Min Beis. Someone's in the middle of davening and he realizes he's about to carry lo yafsik. Don't stop in the middle of Shemona Esrei el yikatzer. Rather, he should shorten the brachas. The Rishonim explain what does that mean to the beginning and the end of each bracha. Yara litful if someone is down into the mikvah. If he's able to get up, get dressed, and recite Shema before Neizachama, Yalav Yiskasev Yikra. Of course, that's L'chatchila. V'imlav, let's say he's not able to, so what does she do? He wants to say Shema. Yiskasev Ayim Yikra, cover himself with water and say Shema. V'le Yiskasev Lubimei or Ayim. Now with smelly water, V'lubimei Misha, now with flax water, Shetavel Techan Mayim, unless he pours additional water into it. How distant do you have to be from Tzaya in order to say Shema? Arba Amoy. So now we're sort of segueing from the halachas of Balkari in the second half of this Mishnah to figure out when is one allowed to say Shema if there is, number one, Ereva in his proximity, which is in the case of the mikvah. You see through the mikvah water and you can see the Ereva, we'll see the exact parameters, etc. And number two, about Saya. So let's just begin the Gemara and then we will call it a day. The first part of the Mishnah, you have to the but let's say one is in the middle of laning should not stop and walk away. He should slur his words as he reads. As we had a story a few days ago, so he has to stop after 3 psukim. Tani, don't live another price. You should walk in front of the Saya till it's behind you 4 amos. You walk to the sides. Says the Gemara, if you walk forwards, walk forwards. If not, you walk to the sides. Let's say you daven and you realize, there was Saya next to me. Even though it was wrong, you're not allowed to daven in proximity to Saya, to excrement. The tefillah is tefillah. Maskal Rav, what do you mean? The zevach, the carbon of Risham is a te'eva. Since you didn't have Avera, tefillah te'eva is not a good tefillah. We'll pick it up from the bottom of the summer to the next year.